A few weeks ago, I did a video about how Habs fans were watching practices at the Complex Sportif CN in Brossard and equating what players were doing in practice to the results we should expect in the regular season from them, which is, of course, as we all agreed, a little asinine. But now people have taken it to another level because now they're taking the videos and they're giving their medical diagnosis and opinions on a particular player named Kirby Dach. I don't see any doctors here, do you? Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Puck Talk Montreal. And in this episode, we're going to talk about, yes, you guessed it, videos and misinterpretations. Call it part 2 if you want. Before we get to those misinterpretations, let's interpret something really good here, and that is Noah Dobson making his first strides on the Canadiens practice facility ice. It's great. Dobson out there getting a feel for the ice, playing with his first pucks, just moving around a little bit. Of course, it's his first practice at the Canadiens complex. So don't expect too much. And don't assess what he can and cannot do. That will come with time. And with a few more drills and his legs getting loose, he'll look a lot better. We know this, right? So it's great to see Dobson there. He's in town. Of course, he's going to be going to the Olympic camp, so he needed to get his legs a little looser than you would expect. So it's great. Now let's go to the real subject of this video, and that is Kirby Dach. Yesterday, Dach made his first appearance on the ice at the Canadiens practice facility, and as you can see here on the far side, he's skating around the dots, putting weight on his bad leg, and just getting a feel for it, right? Which is great. And then as you look at this other video from today, he skates up the ice, looks a little, maybe not going down the ice as quickly as he should or whatever. And now here, you could see that he's moving his feet a little bit faster, making cuts, firing, using both edges, turning, stopping on that bad leg again, and coming in and taking another shot on goal. So what I get from this is that, like anybody else coming off an injury, when you first start to skate or you first get on the ice, you got to warm up your legs. Why? Because your leg is still tight. You haven't used it in a long time, so you've got to loosen it up. It's kind of like when you go out for a jog when you're playing baseball, right? You go out and you take your jog around the baseball field to loosen up, and that warms up your legs so that if you do have to run down a fly ball or, try to go and get a grounder in the infield, you have the ability to move. Because if you're stiff, you're not moving anywhere. And that's kind of what Kirby Dach is doing right now. He's starting his practices looking a little stiff in the leg, and then as the sessions progress, he looks better. So that's totally normal. Why do I know this? Well, as I've mentioned to you guys before, I've hurt my knee. I blew out my meniscus tendon when I was playing junior, and I had to wear a brace for 6 months. And before I could get back onto the ice, I had to rehab, and I felt like my leg was a piece of wood when I got on the ice the first time. Why? 1, because it was tight, and 2, because I was apprehensive. I was worried about making a wrong move and hurting myself again. And it took some time for me to get away from that habit. It also took me longer to warm up at the beginning, but as I worked on it, I became more limber much more quickly, and I looked more comfortable as the sessions progressed, right? That's what you're going to see from Kirby Dach here. Not going to say it's going to be tomorrow or the day after, but you're going to see progression in how comfortable he is on the ice. Because after all, when you're a hockey player, there's 2 things you have to trust yourself with. One is your hands, the other is your legs, especially your legs. And if you don't trust your legs, your game is going to suffer. I don't care if you're trying to stick handle. If your legs are in the back of your mind, you can't focus on everything else that you're doing. You're focusing primarily on your balance, on your positioning, on your stiffness. Am I close to a guy? Is he going to hit me? Everything that you could think of goes through your head. It's kind of like a sort of PTSD after an injury, right? And this is Dach's second. So you would expect that after the first time when he came back and he looked a little stiff to start the season, as the season progressed, he looked better. He was making better plays, thinking better with the puck, producing. Then the second injury came around. And now the one thing that Kirby Dach's going to have to teach himself is patience. He can't rush himself. He needs to be able not only to trust his body, but to trust his head. And in order to do that, he's got to give himself time. The organization's ready to give it to him. The organization is ready to absolutely let Kirby Dach take the time that he needs to rehab properly. Others, however, they want to see him out there as quickly as possible. For the player and for the team, that's not really a great idea, especially given the fact that it's a contract year for Dach. If you want him to contribute to the team and you want him to have some value, you want to see him come back as his best version. We haven't really seen that with Montreal because he's been more injured than he was healthy. But hopefully, with the right time in rehab and the right time to be able to come back and convalesce properly and trust himself again, we're going to see the right kind of Kirby Dach. And that comes to another conversation I heard about Kirby Dach. Not only in regards to, taking his videos and trying to give a medical opinion on what you see in the videos, right? It's nobody's place to do that, and even a doctor, okay? He can look and see, but unless he talks to his patient, he's not going to know what's happening on the ice. And so anybody who turns around and looks at a video and tries to diagnose what a player is feeling and doing is joking and shouldn't be doing it, right? Just on principle. And I know everybody's looking for something to talk about in the summer, but you can't do it, man. It doesn't do you any justice because you don't come off sounding intelligent, but you also don't do the player any justice because you're putting out innuendos that are going to be a detriment to what people think of him. So leave it all alone. But the part that I want to really talk about here is the second part of this conversation from this podcast that I listened to yesterday. And that is that if Kirby Dach can't be ready, Zach Bolduc should be the second line center for the Montreal Canadiens. Okay. Nothing on the host here because this wasn't his comment. He was as surprised as anybody. But the guest, hold your horses, buddy. Okay? Let's get one thing straight here. Zach Bolduc, despite what you said, did not play center in the last 5 seasons. That includes the last 2 of junior. And he was drafted as a winger by the St. Louis Blues. So if you would go back and think, would he be drafted as a center? If he would have stayed a center, maybe. But his production was nowhere nearly as good as it was until he went to the wing. And I'll show you the proof, right? Here is Zach Bolduc's history in junior, okay? Starting with 2019-2020 with Rimouski, his rookie season. He got 52 points in 55 games, all of those at center playing with Alexis Lafrenière, okay? Lafrenière, the next season, goes to the NHL, and Bolduc is leaned on to be the top 6 center. Gets 29 points in 27 games, not too shabby for a shortened season. All that because of COVID, of course. And then most of the scouts in that season were referencing him as having extended experience at center. But it stops there. He gets traded to the Quebec Ramparts where Patrick Roy in 2021-2022 decides to put him on the wing, right? And he puts him out there on the wing, and he's rotated in only situationally. So if he was facing another left-handed center, or if, he wanted a particular play made, a set play, and he needed a left-handed center out there. That's the only time he got slotted at C. So as a winger, 99 points in 65 games. None too shabby, right? Fast forward another season. Played the entire year on the wing with Nathan Gaucher and James Malatesta he provided grit and scoring for that line. Guess what, folks? 110 points in 61 games and a long playoff run that ended with the Quebec Ramparts winning the Memorial Cup. So I say this. Zach Bolduc, I'm not putting you at center, especially given the fact that Bolduc only has 35 faceoffs taken at the National Hockey League level in 3 years. Why in the bloody hell would I put him out there to take faceoffs? And this faceoff percentage is nothing to talk about, right? I believe it was somewhere in the 40 to 41 range. So why am I going to put you out there? 40 to 41 is what you bitch about with Kirby Dach. So why am I going to put Zach Bolduc out there when he's shown that he produces more on the wing? And here's the proof. Here's his hockey DB, right? In Rimouski, he played a total of 82 games, and he had 81 points. So a point-a-game player. Put him on Quebec where he plays on the wing. He plays 126 games. He's got 209 points. So well above a point a game. So even if you're not an NHL coach, what do you do? Think about it for a minute. Is Zach Bolduc a center or a winger to you? Well, he gets more points on the wing. He can use his grit along the boards to separate man from puck. I want him on the wing. You know what? You're right. You should want him on the wing. And for anybody to turn around and say you're putting the guy as your 2C, you're not doing Bolduc any favors. You're talking about a guy who's coming into Montreal for the first time, right? His hometown team, right? He's from Trois-Rivières. So now if that's the case, right, and he comes out here, he plays 2C, and he absolutely shits the bed, guess what happens? He's in everybody's doghouse. You know how critical people are in Montreal. So why not put him on left or right wing where he's comfortable and producing points? You look at him at the NHL level, and in, 97 games, he's got 45 points. Not quite the production you would think he had in junior, but everybody tails off after junior. And those are decent numbers considering that he wasn't used as much as some other players on the St. Louis Blues, like Robert Thomas, for example. So, give Bolduc his due. Give him his 15 minutes a game, and let's see what the kid can do. And if he produces, great. If he produces at a really high level, and you can see his playmaking is really contributing to his line's production, maybe then you think about putting him at center. All the while, though, in practice, you get Montembeault to come in and work with him at the dot, because as a winger, you know how centers get tossed. He's going to have to take faceoffs eventually. So why not let him learn to take a better faceoff while he's playing the wing? And then, if he shows you he can take faceoffs and he plays well on the wing, maybe then you think about putting him at center and seeing how that goes in the preseason next year. Not now. You're 2C now. You need somebody there with a little bit of experience. And as I outlined earlier, I think Joe Volano can be a 2C, and I think that Jake Evans is probably the best option at 2C right now for the Canadiens because he's done it before. But Bolduc, no. So I need people to stop with this. I know why people want to put Bolduc out there, because he's a French Canadian, because, it's Montreal, and it looks good to have a French Canadian center. We haven't had one in a long time, and I would tend to agree. But you're not going to put him in a situation where he's going to end up being in the fans' doghouse or the coach's doghouse or anybody else's doghouse. You put him in a situation to succeed. That's what teams and coaches do. If you don't want to do that, stay away from the rink, stay away from the kids, and let the big boys play. All right? Stop with the diagnoses on Kirby Dach, because none of us are MDs. In fact, if you want to look up Malakis me diploma, that's another story for another day, and something that my brother says quite often. But there are a lot of us out there that like to be armchair doctors and armchair quarterbacks. There wouldn't be podcasts if we weren't. But at the end of the day, it's not fair to the player to try to diagnose what you see in a video that somebody else is taking while he's practicing. And because you don't know what he's doing off ice. There was another article, as I mentioned before, that said, he's not squatting as much as a normal NHL player. Or what does a normal NHL player squat? Or deadlift? Do you know? Probably not. And it depends on the player. Some players squat more than others. Why? Because they're stronger. So what is normal NHL squat weight? Stop with the diagnoses. Stop listening to people saying, I saw him at the gym and he's not lifting enough, or he's on the ice and he doesn't look like he can't stick handle because he's not moving his legs enough. Stop. Okay? Kirby Dach is going to be fine long term. Give him time to get better. Zach Bolduc, not your second line center. Move on from that. And let's get moving. Next episode, I come back to the Atlantic Division and I talk about the Sun Belt. Get ready for that one because it's going to be really interesting.